right, welcome back, everybody, to Mackey's Retail Roundup Live. I am Spencer Israel, Stock Market TV. This guy is Jeff Mackey from Mackey's Retail Roundup. Great name, Jeff. You are back from your trip to Annapolis. How was it? Did you eat crab?
I ate so much crap. I ate so much crap and so much Starbucks. And I timed every damn one of the Starbucks. Starbucks went 9 for 10 in terms of delivering my order in 4 minutes or less. That's just outstanding. I mean, it's to me, it just makes me happy. It makes me happy. It makes it worth being in the airline for terminals.
Even when he's out on a trip, he never stops the channel checks. That's why we love him. All right, Jeff, here's what we're going to do. We'll start off, we'll talk about your wish list, kind of where things stand from a macro point of view. And then we're going to do a bit of a review on the big box retailers. We thought, what's cool about Jeff's universe is there's probably at least a dozen ways you can slice the pie, right? Into industry groups and subgroups within that. So today we're just going to do a review of the big box retailers and kind of see where Jeff stands on that. But first, Jeff, here is your wish list. When last we spoke, we had the 90-day pause. That box was checked. Now you've unchecked it.
I've unchecked it. That turned out to not be a real thing. So they're just kind of screwing with us, Spencer. Right? It's been 3 weeks. I mean, for 3 weeks we've been putting up this. I just want any of these. Any of these gives me just a path out of the darkness. It gives me just a flicker that I can guide and use as my North Pole for navigating my way. Or at least just seeing how this works out without us just canceling Christmas and the world becoming a Dickensian mess, a dystopian.
Cancel Christmas in April, man. Come on.
This is when we're buying Christmas, Spencer. This is when the retailers actually are buying Christmas. They start doing that in May, especially from China. Not this year. So, it's Christmas is definitely on the table. I don't want to push the Christmas panic button just yet, but you know what? We're getting there. It's time to worry about Christmas.
So the retailers, they do their ordering and they're buying for the holiday season now, is what we're saying.
In May in China for a lot of kind of the particularly seasonal goods, particularly when you're getting them from either Vietnam or China, both of which are just, we don't have deals with them to the point of the wish list where, that's kind of it's a big problem. Anyway, which is why I really wanted to get into the big box stores. They carry a little bit of everything. We're talking 30,000 feet or less. That's not the conventional definition, as you say, but to me, these are stores that all have their own parking lot. They're all stores that you go to them and, you're going very intentionally to these stores. You don't drive to a Target, park at the Target, and then walk someplace next door to it. It's a destination place. They evoke feels. You get the feels when you go to Costco. I've heard you talk about going to Costco and how that's just a little more than shopping.
Oh, yeah. It's a religious experience for me. It's great.
It's a pretty nice little Saturday, as they used to say in Generation X in our classic movies. That's these kind of stores. And you know what? They're not all impacted by the tariffs the same way. And some of them are doing incredibly well. They're actually crushing. So the numbers are coming down for everybody. The recession's not great, but if you go to the next slide, you can see the impact on these stores. That they all get the feels. People like Target, that you're saying something really specific. You go to Target, if you're at Dick's, you're either buying golf stuff or you're there with your kid. These are the feel stores. These are where consumers consume stuff. You can see this is the Morgan Stanley estimate. I shared it in a piece I wrote last week. I wanted to highlight it again. 70% of Target's earnings before income tax could go away just through the tariffs and how things stand right now. So, I'm not trying to push the Santa Claus button, but 70% is actually a big number. For Best Buy, that number is about 50%. And as you move on down the list, you can see the margin impact is less and less. But the point is that just because these stores kind of resemble each other, they're all big places you go for, affordable product. They all have their own feel to them. They're not all created equal. And especially in the case like some of these more discretionary names. But again, you can find all-time highs if you know where to dig.
So this chart is just showing the earnings before interest and taxes for a whole bunch of retailers, and this is Morgan Stanley's estimate of the hit of how hard the number would be hit with the tariffs as they stand right now. So that's a lot for Target. That's
a huge. These are really garbage margin stores. Like these operations are not flowing a ton of cash right now, and so how big a risk it is to their core operation. Why the stocks you see as we get into them. the companies that are doing well are pretty liquid relative to kind of the Targets of the world. They get most of their profits in the case of Target. We'll get into it more later, but they get most of their profits from discretionary. And that means China, that means Vietnam, and that means they're frozen right now.
Yeah. All right, let's start and look at, you mentioned the fact that there are winners. Ollie's Bargain Outlet and TJX, two of those winners. These charts are going up and to the right, which you really don't see too much of when you look at retailers. But what's the deal here?
You don't see charts like this in much of anything, Spencer.
That's actually true. You know what?
I mean, they're just kind of ticking in their own little space, their own little just kind of small town folksy continuum. Look at those charts. Those are just, there's no 50% spikes up or down. They've just been plugging away. That's a 3-year look. So if they were going to explode, they would. But no one really thinks, TJX is famously well run, just an incredible operation. Domestically sourced, at least a good chunk of them. They're opportunistic, which means they don't have to carry the same stuff over and over again. And they're really good in a certain kind of bad economy, in an economy where customers are just going down just a little bit. It's they're not getting bleak like you might with that Kohl's. If you're going to Kohl's, you probably have a case of the SADs. And we'll get to that later, but we talked about setting a 5 before. TJX is more of a treasure hunt, and Kohl's is a little sad. Ollie's is somewhere in the middle. They're crushing. They're absolutely it's this just kind of a Pennsylvania small, super deep discount store. Totally opportunistic buys. They never buy anything from abroad because they're just buying kind of closeout stuff from other companies. Crushing, just month after month, putting up the performance. And again, it's a vibe store. It's a feel kind of place, and they're pretty much tariff proof. So you're starting to see a lot of money rush into it. We get to the next slide and talk about the club stores, the cult stores. It's impossible to ignore Costco and Walmart over the last 3 years. They've just been just knocking the cover off the ball. Both ridiculously expensive. You don't hear anything about BJ's ever.
It's not as expensive, and there must be a reason for that, Jeff. No,
it's a regional thing. I think there's not a national footprint. I think there's just part of it is kind of the Ollie's phenomenon. Unless you know to look for them. Yeah, I think I've been to 2 in my whole life, and I am a little OCD about this in general. Like I've pulled the car over, acting like, oh, hey, it's an Ollie's. Look at that! Oh my God! And so I think out of sight, out of mind. But man, they're just cranking away. And in a world where everyone wants to sell Costco and Walmart, people, I know you said a sad goodbye to your Costco. It's like putting a dog down.
I had a position in Costco's, some relatively small. I sold it like a month ago now, and I've sort of regretted it every day since then. So I'm just kind of waiting to get back in
because we're just in this insane world, right? And it's kind of just spread around 1,000 again. Just sort of being super overvalued, but the best idea in its group. BJ's has a lot of the same stuff going for it, and it's its own vibe. It's a little under the radar relative to these behemoths. Now that is not just because they're underlooked. It's because Costco and Walmart are really going to take over the world. The longer this goes in this kind of frozen state, Costco and Walmart just have so many resources. They have so much money to chuck at the problem. They can outlast anybody else on this list. So
just to be clear, you like all 3 of these names?
I do. I'm long all 3 of them, mostly because in the case of Costco and Walmart, I don't want to sell them, and I just play Hamlet with them all day, to be or not to be the thing. So I'm a little bit stuck. I could see myself hedging it, especially on Walmart. BJ's is just kind of a buy here. It's just like, it's a throwback to a simpler time when, earnings were at least a tiny bit predictable and you knew the company could kind of pull through no matter what. So, and remember, a lot of these guys were really tested by the supply chain problems that we saw in COVID. And so for the most part, they got better, they diversified it, and they've learned how to kind of adapt. In contrast to kind of the winners, there are some companies, I don't know what Minnesota did to Trump. Maybe it's the Waltz thing. I'm not sure what happened, but some of these policies, Spencer, it feels like a little personal to us fellas from Minnesota when Target and Best Buy are kind of taking it in the short ones pretty much every week on the news front. I mean, it's that April 2nd thing for Best Buy was just absolutely the worst possible news. They're being thrown in because of a security violation for computers. I mean, this is a company that sells television sets. They're really not putting the country at risk here, but every bit of their merchandise got frozen. when that happened. They can't import product. And so what's that mean? Who knows? It could be over with a tweet. But in the meantime, they're not going to be able to buy any in the inventory. That's kind of a problem.
This is a great chart. I think if you turn Minnesota sideways 90 degrees, it would look more like the stock chart, right? But
I took some artistic liberties here. But,
yeah.
Got a little weepy. There's a single tear rolled down my cheek as I drew this chart, and I thought, these used to be a proper set of retailers located like 5 miles away from each other, just full of nice folks. Oh, geez, Best Buy said when they saw that chart go up, we're pretty much screwed. I mean, it down 25% since Liberation Day. And like Nike, you want to buy them. It's you may or may not, but I mean, it's particularly with Best Buy, they're cheap. It's a really well-run company. I really have a ton of respect for management. It's going to be just hard to move a lot of TVs if you can't actually buy the inventory, and we're actually driving ourselves into a recession. Your TVs are going to get more expensive almost in any scenario, even without demand. That's brutal. It's like this little stagflation whirlwind of their own creation. So that's ridiculous.
Jeff, isn't it funny how narratives can change with price? A few years ago, the narrative on Best Buy was that they had survived Amazon. Amazon couldn't quite kill them. Amazon killed everybody else, but somehow Best Buy managed to survive and sidestep that. And that narrative is long gone now, right? With the price.
It is, but I think these guys can surprise to the upside when they finally get through who knows how much demand. And now this problem, they had so much pull through from COVID, and TVs last so much longer now. That's really the big core of their business. And so they go from kind of hot iPhone to hot game unit, whatever. That really is what drives Best Buy's incremental business. Now we've already seen the Sony PlayStation. The next one's already gone up 25%. Nintendo doesn't even know what they're going to do with the replacement device they got out. That's the bread and butter of Best Buy. They need people to come into the stores, and all that is just thrown into chaos. And so, they did actually manage to find a foothold. They're much better at buying at just a better place to shop than, say, Costco or Walmart or Target. Remember, all three, everybody had too many TVs. For the back half of COVID, there's TVs in the aisles of like grocery stores and stuff. It's in that time, Best Buy has made itself a much better chain. And also with that theft and everything, there's kind of questions as to whether or not, why would Target sell TVs? Other than they look cool on the back of the store, no one's going to buy one there. Best Buy is just a better shopping experience. Target is a great example of it. I mean, it's a bummer. It's not a super easy fix. I know I rip on them all the time, but they carry so many different products, and they're really sort of emblematic of the have and have nots in this crisis right now. Target gets almost all their profits, or at least a huge chunk of them, from just kind of stuff from China, just their T-shirts, their private label stuff. Huge emphasis on the discretionary side of Target. That was their special sauce, right? You go into them. We talked about vibes before. The vibe of Target was, I went in there looking for detergent, and I left with a new set of golf clubs, and I got the kids' bikes. Just that kind of, and a T-shirt that said "World's Best Dad," because it was ironic, but in a good way, in a way that was just this side of cringe. And so I could see myself in this T-shirt. That was Target. They're not getting people in the door anymore. And one of the problems is they don't really have control over their inventory. When that dock strike last year almost happened, Target trashed their quarter by ordering tons and tons of merchandise that was just to get ahead of a dock strike that never happened. So what have they done in terms of trying to get around these tariffs? I have no idea. It's going to be an adventure, and it's going to take a bunch of pennies out of the earnings. So normally when Target's trading this far behind Costco, Walmart, you short Walmart, you get long Target. That trade's worked for a long time. That trade's not going to work now.
And it's the same thing as Best Buy as far as the narratives go, right? Because the narrative on Target was like the official store of white women everywhere, right?
Oh, I've spent a lot of time there too, Spencer.
Yeah. Okay, yeah.
You're making me feel kind of creepy. We've gone to the other side of cringe. But you're right. It is the same side. It's discretionary.
It was a cultural thing. It was a cultural thing for a while.
Yeah, it is. And that's kind of, I always say, specialties where love goes to die. Like Costco, you won't always be weepy about it. There'll be a day, you'll kind of say, geez, they've been out of stock on my 80 pounds of ramen noodles I wanted today. And the throw will be gone at some point. But Target got a little too close to the sun, and man, they've been getting burned ever since.
All right, let's move on. Let's talk about Kohl's. This was like my preferred department store for a long time. I haven't been in one in years though. There's been private equity sniffing around Kohl's for years at this point, Jeff. You would think that at some point they'd go the same way as Macy's or Nordstrom and go off the board, right? But I don't know.
They kind of lost their shot. It's 3 years ago they were offered over $60 a share for this. It's a $6 stock now, and it's going lower. This is the extreme end of the risk. I don't want to always bag on Kohl's just because they're from Wisconsin, but kind of just they offend me on a lot of different levels. But the problem here is since the board of directors turned down the buyout offers, earnings are down something like 90%. Shares are down 88%. It's trading at 6, and not only that, but they've got to get a bunch of new debt refinanced in July. Now, what's their quarter look like? No idea. They've gone from unbelievably cash flow positive and just a nice stable business that private equity would love to a really thorny turnaround story that private equity can probably buy out of bankruptcy in about 6 months if things don't go just right. When I say that this deal, the absence of a deal, the trade seizure that we're in right now is a problem that gets worse every day. Kohl's is kind of what I mean. They got to get about in their life. It's not just a matter of them ordering Christmas. They're already tapped into the revolver. They're paying a ton for money just to borrow anything. Every retailer needs to borrow to buy their inventory. Kohl's, is looking at a situation where they might not have the juice. That's a real problem. And it's what a death spiral looks like.
Kohl's was approached for the takeover bid that valued the company at $9 billion in 2022. $9 billion. Today, Kohl's is worth $750 million. So
80?
that's not great.
It was not terrific decision making on the vertical,
No.
and really persistent bidders too. I mean, they just kept coming back and they wanted a piece of it, and then there were other guys involved in it. It's like and Cole's just kind of sat back and said, "No, we don't feel like it's time yet. We can."
That's got to be an all timer. That's got to be an all timer for boneheaded board moves right there. But
in the non-corrupt division, right? Like in that very special category of it's like they did not sell because they were hiding anything other than their own kind of lack of understanding of how retail works. That's the only thing they were hiding. It was we're not very good merchants. Hopefully no one will notice. And so they chose not to sell. And boy, people have really caught on to the lack of merchandising. Remember when they became the delivery center for Amazon? They rolled that out nationally to drive traffic by becoming basically a post office for stuff that disgruntled Amazon customers wanted to return. It's like,
the implication was you get them in the door and then, I'm magically buying things, but I guess it didn't work out. So I don't know.
You know what? The gift shop that post offices, there's a reason you don't see those because it's a really crappy business. No one wants to be in the post office. And so they're probably not going to pick up impulse items. I don't know. I'm just taking a stab at it. Maybe they've got some documents that supported their strategy, but it seems like my aversion to it was the right call.
Oh man, this classic. All right, let's wrap it up here with Dick's Sporting Goods. This chart noticeably looks different than the other ones we were looking at. But what do you say about this one?
This is really there's two leverage points here. China, for one, just lots of plastic stuff coming over, but really the depths of kind of the recession that might be blooming from this. Dick's is a terrific company. I mean, they're in similar kind of in spirit to what Best Buy is trying to do, but sporting goods are synonymous with so much of kind of the American experience. This is really. We talked about vibes before, man. This is where you take your kid to go pick up some golf balls or buy new mitts every year and all that stuff. We don't want to see a dip in that. And so these guys get hurt two ways. One, because the estimates are going to come down. Not a super expensive company, not a very expensive stock. Absolute stranglehold on the industry. But sporting goods and kind of athleisure type of stuff isn't going to get much hotter. It doesn't figure to, as we've seen with the shoe companies. So Dick's is going to take a hit fundamentally. And another story where just every day it gets worse. I don't know how their in stock is for baseball, but by the time fall sports roll around, they're not going to have their stuff for football. That's product that you need to buy now. And if you don't buy it now, you need to pay a lot more for it later. That's before you even get to the tariff. So the two-tier problem in analyzing these companies beyond vibes and predictability is, Dick's has some issues to deal with just if you come up with a stable kind of 10%, but you can't do the math on it because right now it's 150% for a pair of shin guards that you would sell to, a baseball catcher. They just can't buy them. It's just crazy.
Here's the good news, such that it exists, Jeff. All these companies are going to be forced to come out in the next few weeks and update the public about what they're doing as far as not just their financials, but their buying is concerned, right? So we are going to be hearing from them through earnings reports and conference calls and all that stuff in the next 3 to 4 weeks. So hopefully that provides some clarity as far as what everyone's doing and how they're approaching this. But otherwise,
And there should be some awesome trades. The theme will be some, along the lines of just beat and guide just to nothing, just a guide to where absolutely driving a car pitch black midnight with the headlights off,
well,
flying down the road at 90 miles an hour. We have no idea.
They're going to pull their guidance as they probably should, right? Because they don't know.
If someone who gave me guidance right now, I would just call shenanigans on them immediately. I would think less of them for even trying to, and I would be a little hurt that they would think I'd be dumb enough to believe them. Or, there'd be something going on where somebody was being disrespected. I would have to pick it apart. But yeah, right. No one wants to give guidance, and so but the tone of it will be interesting. We're going to see a huge pull forward early. I want to see how the consumer holds up because this is when we're going to get to, it's. We'll be able to see an impact pretty much immediately in the store levels. When I was out doing my OCD shopping thing, this is not a huge kind of insight. You don't want to put too much stock in just what you see out there, but I have a pretty good read for these things, and it was much more subdued. Early April, there was a little bit of a buying frenzy in just about everything. Americans hoarded because that's what we do. And after we hoard, we buckle down, and we are way into buckle down mode now.
Yep. All right, listen up, guys. Jeff publishes a free note, Mackey's retail report that goes out multiple times a week. If you want to sign up, the link is in the description. And if you want to actually find out what he owns, what Jeff is buying, what he is selling, what's in his portfolio, that's in Mackey's retail roundup. The link to that is also in the description on YouTube. So check it out there. And Jeff will be posting a video to his members on Thursday talking about what he's doing, his trades, his buys, his sells, and what is on his watch list, what he wants to buy if certain things were to happen. So the question from the chat about TJX at the current price, maybe he'll talk about it on Thursday. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good teaser. I'll consider it. I'll consider the question. Not cheap. We didn't unearth it. It's not a secret company, but yeah, it's a good stock. It's been working.
All right, Jeff. Thank you. We will see you on Thursday for the video for your members, and then we'll see you next week. Thanks for watching, guys.
All right, Spencer. Thanks, man.